It's no secret that writing can be lonely work, but does it really have to be? Whether you're full-time, part-time, or just starting out, you'll get insights into the tricks, tips, and production habits of writers from every level of the biz. From best-selling authors to those launching their first novels, you're sure to be in the company of friends as we encourage great writers to divulge and share their secrets.
This is the Great Writer Share podcast with your host, first-time dark fantasy author, Faye Trask.
Hello, and welcome to episode number 62 of the Great Writer Share podcast, a podcast where every week we hijack an hour or so of time from some of the kindest and hardest working writers around today to join us on the show and discuss everything that makes them tick, roar, and bounce. My name is Faye Trask, and it is the 16th of November as of recording. If you're a new listener, welcome. If you're a regular listener, welcome back. So let's dive right into my personal update. As of this morning, my little heater in my office is broken. So I get to freeze all winter long. It makes me so sad because it's quite chilly in here this morning. Not happy. In writing news for me, I have completed my rough draft about halfway through October, which I am so excited about. A lot of people say that that's the hardest thing. Getting that first 30,000 words is very difficult. And every time someone says that to me, I'm like, well, my rough draft is only 37. So, yep. The biggest thing to remember for new writers is that your rough draft does not have to be 100,000 words or 50,000 words or whatever. The word count that you need to tell your story is the word count it needs to be. I managed to tell my story in 37,000 words, but I left a lot of details out that I know are missing. I'm going to go back and put them in, and it's going to be great. I'm so excited about that. But all you new writers out there, don't stress over the rough draft word count. Just write. That's all you need. So because I completed my rough draft, I was kind of lost and I didn't know what to do. So I hired a book coach, which has been the best decision I could have made. And I highly recommend anyone, whether you're a new writer or trying a new genre, even trying a series for the first time. If you're in uncharted territory, possibly look into getting a book coach. My book coach is absolutely amazing. They have asked me numerous questions that I only put little thought in before when I was originally writing, and now we have created so much background and lore and just incredible things that I am so excited to put into my book that I would have not even considered any of those items if I had not had someone holding my hand along the way, shall we say. So it is coming up on the holiday season. Well, actually, the holiday season is already upon us. There was a holiday just yesterday, I believe. I don't know which one, because there are a lot. So if you are looking for the perfect holiday gift for any of your writer friends, hop on over to www.danielwilcox.com/merch/Great Writer Share and check out the great merch we have. We have travel mugs, we have notebooks, we got t-shirts, sweatshirts, you name it. Go over and check out the site. Maybe you can find that perfect gift for the writer you know. I want to give out a big thank you to everyone who answered the question of the week this week, as posted on Patreon and Facebook. The question we asked was, how does travel affect your writing? Does it inspire? Does it hinder? Does it make you feel more connected to your story? The wonderful Meg Jolly said, I'm feeling stifled by lockdown and not being able to travel. even to nearby places, let alone far ones. That's just a distant dream right now. I find travel so inspiring and soak up the cultures where I go. I miss it and I hope to travel again soon. I agree, Meg. That's my favorite thing about traveling is seeing different cultures from just right in the middle of it. It's inspiring. Julie Heiner says, I love writing on the road. I can't do it right now, but when I traveled, I used versions of my tools on my phone. That is so true, Julie. And because of today's technology, it is absolutely amazing that we have that ability to simply put a note on our phone or even write out whole documents. I miss traveling. I love technology. I'm a tech geek. So thank you again for answering our question of the week. Today's guest is Lucinda E. Clark. We had such an amazing conversation. We could have talked for hours. We discussed how Lucinda fell into numerous jobs, her versatility as a writer, and the many adventures she had due to it. I am so excited for you guys to hear our interview. Before we get into the show, we wanted to remind you about our Patreon community over at www.patreon.com/greatwritershare, where for as little as $1 a month, you can get involved in our behind-the-scenes group, benefiting from early ad-free access episodes of the show, join our private Slack channel, ask upcoming guests any of your questions, and get involved in our monthly giveaway. So if you like the idea of upping your author career and getting all of that good stuff, then one more time, that's www.patreon.com/greatwritershare. And now, without any further ado, let's dive into the interview with the one and only Lucinda E. Clark. Today's guest is the amazing Lucinda E. Clark. Lucinda is an award-winning self-published writer of memoir and psychological thriller, a globe traveler, screenwriting lecturer, and owner of a South African video production company. She is the recipient of a number of awards, including a finalist for Book Excellence Awards, the 2017 New Apple Award for Excellence in Independent Publishing, a two-time winner of the Reader's Favorite Book Award, and a finalist in the Independent Author Network's Book of the Year Awards. Lucinda has lived a colorful life, having met Nelson Mandela, broadcasted with a bayonet to her throat, managed a rock band, gotten involved in a crowd at a public hanging, survived riots, dodged a hail of bullets, as well as deportation from Libya. And now she is here to join us on Great Writers Share podcast. Lucinda, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. That was an amazing introduction. But I survived it all. You can tell that because I'm here now.
Absolutely. I had to read your bio several times because you have lived such an amazing life. Like that's the type of life that books are written about, like dreams are made of there. That just proves your diligence with everything. So I gotta know a little bit more about this rock band, because it's not often people go from managing a rock band to writing novels.
It was very much a part-time thing to start with. I was already scripting for the South African Broadcasting Corporation, mainly at that time radio programs. And in fact, my ex got involved. He was working down in Swaziland, and he got involved with the King Mswati III's 21st birthday celebration concert, which was going to be bigger and better than that huge one that was held in America. I can't remember the name of it. You'll have to excuse me, I'm getting very old, wrinkly, and crazy these days. So anyway, was it Nebsworth? Something like that, anyway. And so they had 33 bands playing over 3 days. And the first act on was a group called Iron Mask. And they got very friendly with my husband, and they asked him to manage them. And he said, fine. But what he didn't really think about was that he was still living and working in Swaziland, and I was living and working in Johannesburg. So, of course, the band came home to Johannesburg because the whole concert had been in Swaziland. And it sort of fell to me to manage them. And I would say if anybody is thinking about managing a rock band, there's only one word: don't. It is like trying to round up cats, in a 5-acre field. I tried to get them gigs, but they were a heavy rock band, and it was very hard to try and get them into small clubs because when they're set up, I mean, the whole room just bounced.
Oh, yeah.
Ceilings, walls, floors, the lot. They were very talented. The lead singer was a nightmare. I can't remember what job he had during the day, but I do know his part-time job was stripping for ladies' hen parties. And he also ate fire. And he could never remember the words to his songs. So, but it was about 2 years I've tried to get them gigs and tried to get them into the band room for rehearsal and all kinds of things. It was fun. If you like tearing your hair out. And they did have a gig which started at midnight and ended at 3:00 in the morning once a week. So that was a late night, quite frequently. Yes, ow. I think they could have done well, but they just weren't very disciplined. So anyway, I don't think anything. I did change their name. I thought, this is brilliant. I must tell you this. I changed their name from Iron Mask to Alchemy because I said they were turning base metal, rock metal, into gold.
Nice.
I thought that was
Love
brilliant.
It.
Yeah,
that is.
I did too. They weren't very impressed, but I was. Anyway.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But one of them went off overseas, and I don't really know it. Bit by bit, they just sort of drifted apart.
Yeah.
They were all in their early 20s, and guys of that age, I don't know. They were great guys. We had a lot of fun, but it all came to an end.
Wow, that is amazing. Unbelievable. So switching back to writing, I've got questions all over the map. We're going to be unlinear as much as possible.
That's fine.
That's what I do. How has living in so many places, because I believe in your bio, it's like 8 different countries. Are you on to 9? Right. How has that affected your writing?
I think, in fact, if you go back a few decades to when people were writing these novels that sort of sold lots but never won anything, like the Booker Prize, the Pulitzer Prize, you'll find in their bios that they worked on merchant ships, and they worked in, digging holes in Alaska's ice, and they were waiters, they were, you name it, they did it, they drove lorries, whatever. And I think it really does help because I've got a lot to pull on. I've got a lot of experiences. I've got a lot of things that have happened to me that I can include in the writing. So I do think, yes, it helps a lot.
I agree completely because I've been to, I think, 5 countries, and I think the biggest thing that someone could pull from that is you learn about those cultures. And if you do become a writer or if you are writing, you can add a little bit more authenticity into your work. I love that. Yeah. That's so awesome.
Yes, it also widens your whole horizon. You can understand other cultures, or you've seen them in action. You've seen different politics in action, different religions in action, different scenery, different ways of getting about, different mindsets. And mindset is, I think, the main thing. That if you can understand mindsets, and everybody thinks, oh, well, I've lived in country A all my life, and therefore I expect all the other countries in the world to think like me, want the same things I want, do the same things that I want to do. And nothing could be further from the truth.
I couldn't agree more. I got that reality check when I went to Israel, and we were just walking around Jerusalem and went up this random set of stairs, and we were on a bunch of rooftops. And of course, being American, I instantly thought of Disney's Aladdin, and I'm like, oh my God, it's Agrabah. And I had no idea what time it was, but all of a sudden this music was playing in the air, and it was time for them to pray. And I'm like, oh, and I just stood up there and I watched all of this happening. I'm like, yeah, this is, we need more of this.
A good example I had is that when we were filming in a rural field, miles from anywhere in the middle of South Africa, I'd done a lot of educational programs beforehand. That was my main focus because I was a teacher before I fell into the media. I fall into things all my life. And I was talking to her about, education and how getting on and all the rest of it. And she looked at me and she said, I don't want any of that. I am happy with my little patch of land. I am happy growing my vegetables. I do not want to get exams. I do not want to go to university. I do not want my children to take exams or go to university. I want them to live here with me in our compound and just be happy. And I thought, wow, we automatically assume everybody wants to climb up and up and up and don't.
Yeah.
It's what's right for some is fine, but it's not right for everybody.
That is so true. I think a lot of people need to realize that and be like, everyone's got their own drummer to march to.
True. Very true. Yes. You put it much better than I did.
So looking at your impressive backlog of books, you do have a book labeled The Worst Riding School. Can you tell me about your whole horseback riding school? What happened there?
Oh, dear. It's the very worst riding school because there wasn't a worst one. If you have a riding instructors with 5 horses, 3 of which are fit for the knacker's yard and nothing else because they can hardly walk, and you've got the Pony Club manual stuck down the front of your jodhpurs, right? You've got to be down there among the very worst. I fell into that as well. My ex, who was a charismatic Walter Mitty that you just couldn't trust. He reminds me of somebody who's been very popular in your country recently. and he bought 2 horses when we were moving from one town in France, in Botswana, to another town, without having a horse box or anything. It's 400 kilometers, so that's just a minor problem. We did manage to solve it. And when I realized I'd never owned a horse in my life before, I couldn't really ride very well, and I was quite scared of them because I'd been kicked a few times and stood on a few times, but my children were over the moon. And one thing led to another. They were expensive to keep, and then somebody said to me, I hear you've got a horse. I don't believe your daughter. She says you've got a horse. And I said, well, we do have a horse, yes, pony too. And she said, well, can I come and ride them? My mummy will pay. Well, of course, ding dong. I'm thinking, wow, that'll help pay for the horse feed. And I was feeding them almost pure oats, which anybody who's listening and knows anything about horses knows how appalling that is, because it's like putting aeroplane fuel into your, common everyday sedan.
Oh no.
So anyway, she came along, and sure enough, her mother paid her, and then one thing led to another, and more little kids came. And in the end, I was teaching 7 days a week. In the afternoons, I'm still teaching in the morning at the school. And then I'd collect them all in the Land Cruiser in the afternoon, take them to the stables that we finally built. And it sort of devolved from there. One did actually do very well, and he became a trainee jockey later on, but only one. Of all the others, we just had a lot of them. It was just very badly done. I mean, we did win rosettes, but only because our horses were, by that time, pretty good about such things, I mean, they seemed to get the idea of things, and we practiced. And we did have a couple of gymkhanas with the next town, and we took them in a beer truck. It was the only thing we could find to take 5 horses.
Excellent.
And it took 2 lessons. Lesson that Tuesday was how to get your horse into a Chibuku beer truck, because he didn't like the smell of the beer. So anyway, we finally got them inside, and we got them down to Sleepy Pickwick, and we did very well with the rosettes. And then it was just a lot of fun.
That's awesome. I've only had one interaction with a horse, and the person told me, like, oh, don't worry, he's trained. And I rode the horse, or I got on the horse, and all of a sudden it's like, guess what? We're going to run. And I actually got like clotheslined by a tree. I'm like, I'm done. But that
when I look back on it now, though, it's really quite scary because I had no insurance. Right, there was no real hospital in Francistown where we were, so we'd have had to rely on Botswana Game Industries to bring in a chopper to airlift any injured kid down to Johannesburg, which was 800 kilometers. And in fact, in all the time I did it, which is about 2 years, over 2 years, we only had one broken arm, and parents didn't even think about sewing, bless her. So no qualifications and no insurance. That is enough to show you it was not a good riding school.
Right? Absolutely. You've written so many books. Like I was amazed, and just scrolling through, I'm like, which one do I want to pick? There's so many. You have your memoir. There's only one memoir. And then you have...
No, there's three.
There's three. Okay, I wasn't sure on that. So you have memoirs and you have psychological thrillers.
Yep.
How did you decide to switch? Or did you decide to switch? Did it just kind of come to you? What happened there?
I did the memoir first, and then I thought, I wonder if I could write a novel, because I've been writing scripts for coming up 40 years, for radio and TV. And I thought it's quite different. And other things, like company reports or adverts or bits in the paper, articles for magazines and so on. But I'd never written a full-length book novel before. So I thought, I wonder if I can do it. So I did what happened to me, and it's not really that autobiographical, is that I took this girl out of this cozy suburban place in UK, and I put her on a plane. I sent her to Africa, and she got settled into the expatriates community. And then I had civil war break out, and then she escapes, and she has to slog across the desert in order to survive. So that was the second book I wrote. And then I thought, I'm beginning to lose my mind. You do when you get older. It'll come to you. But
I am now.
And so what I did then is I wrote 2 more memoirs of all my filming and my writing career. Truth, Lies and Propaganda, and more Truth, Lies and Propaganda.
Okay.
So I thought, right, that's my life out of the way, because I can read them again when I'm older and remember who I am. I can introduce myself. Well, that was quite clever. And then I did 4 more Amy books, which was the girl I took to Africa. And they sold reasonably well. I'm lousy at marketing. I'm just hopeless at it, really. I've had to learn a whole new business, if you like, because writing was 50% business, 50% writing. And then psychological thrillers seemed to be very popular. So I thought, I wonder. So I penned one, and it's outsold all my African books.
Wow.
And I thought, oh, right, well, let's write a second one. And because I'm greedy and because I can't stop writing, I wrote a third. And I'm now in the middle of doing oh dear, sorry about that. I'm right now in the middle of writing the 4th.
Wow. That's so awesome. I love seeing that someone's going off on one thing and they're like, I'm just going to throw my hand at this, see what happens. And then all of a sudden that's what explodes. It's like, there you go. Now you found it. That's awesome.
It actually, it seems to be the wrong thing to do, because everybody says, oh, Stephen King, he writes scary stuff. James Patterson, he writes spy, whatever stuff.
Yep.
And they're known for that. But there is a limit, I think, to how many in a particular series you can write without beginning to sound repetitive. I think it's almost impossible. Yes. And in fact, their earlier books are much, in my personal opinion, than their later books. And I begin to think, I've read this before. He's done that before. He's jumped off this rooftop, whatever. And the fact that when I was script writing, I was writing for education on all kinds of subjects, everything from splitting the atom to how to bake bread. Or, on a Monday, I would write a program for the Heart Foundation, saying you must only eat red meat because that's the only thing that will keep you alive and healthy. And the next day, I'd be writing for a major crisp or chip, you call them in America, don't you? Things say, don't worry about meat and stuff. What you need is good fried potatoes because they have got more vitamin D, etc. And that's why my books are called Truth, Lies, and Propaganda, because you're very careful about which facts you choose to include and which you sort of conveniently forget.
Oh,
So
yes.
I've written everything from splitting the atom to how to climb a ladder safely. So as far as I'm concerned, you can hopefully, I think in my case, I can either write or I can't write. And if I can write about anything.
Absolutely. Wow. With your script writing, was that part of your production company or was that before?
Well, I fell into that too. I was happily, as I thought, teaching in Johannesburg, and I got fired. Now, I've never been fired in my life before because I'm one of these boring, conscientious people who've never had as much as a parking ticket, you know. And for some reason, I got the job. So a friend of mine who was teaching drama at the school, in fact, her husband was working at the South African Broadcasting Corporation. He said, you've worked on radio before, haven't you? And I said, yes, I have, for about 5 years. And she said, well, why don't you go for an audition at the SABC? So I went and I had this continuity audition, which was an absolute disaster. They asked me to read a page in Afrikaans. And I sort of read it phonetically. I mean, any foreign language, you sort of sit down and you look at it, you try and read it. I mean, everybody was just, in fact, they were calling people into the control room to come and listen to me because it was just so funny. They were absolutely.
Oh, right.
Then they asked me about all these famous people in South Africa, and I'd only been there about a year. And I did tell them this famous opera singer was the Ministry of Finance, so it didn't go down terribly well either. So they then said, why don't you go to the drama department? And so I went for an audition there and I wrote my own stuff because I didn't have anything suitable. They gave me 24 hours notice. And the guy there who ran the English drama department picked me up and said, look, I might use you. I'll use you for a few things occasionally in plays if I'm desperate, but you can write. Go home and write. And that's what I'd always wanted to do since I was about 5 and read noddy books under the you know, when I should have been asleep.
Oh, yes.
And that was just brilliant. And I just went home and I started writing. And when I was earning so much for my writing, mainly for radio at that point, plays, series, etc., various managers picked me up and I was writing, I think, a total of about 30 broadcast minutes a day. I mean, I was just literally piling them up like some sort of robot almost. When I was earning so much for my writing, I could afford to go out teaching. Then I went writing, and then I sort of fell into television because somebody else picked me up and said, would you come and write scripts for our program on TV, which I did. And then I sort of got involved on the production side because a lot of TV people can be very, what's the word, best word of describing it without being awful? They just threw wobblies and had temper tantrums and threw
Oh,
their,
yes.
yeah,
Spoiled.
toys out of the pot. You put it in one word, yes. And I sort of, I was still freelance. I've been freelance always. I've never been employed by anyone as such as on a full-time basis. And I just sort of ended up as the program manager from having just started writing scripts and being a PA and finding locations and all this kind of thing. So I had this kind of background. And then when I moved from Johannesburg down to Durban, I went on writing scripts for a while, and then I got involved in the production. I started directing. Then when I'd done that for a few years, I went in with somebody and we bought the equipment and started, I did the production side, he did the editing side. So I ended up sort of running this, video production company.
Holy.
It wasn't big. It sounds a lot more important than it was, In fact, the bank manager was a bit worried about, how come you're bringing in all this money? What the hell have you got going on? But
suspicious.
Yes. But no, it worked. It worked. And we won a lot of awards and stuff. And I'd like to think that I've done some good in just helping to uplift people. And a lot of the stuff was, how you do things. We'd go out into the field and show people how they worked and how they'd achieved things and how they made things better.
That's amazing. Is your production company how you came to meet people like Nelson Mandela, because Nelson Mandela is like, if nobody knows who he is, then what's wrong with you? You should know. I mean, I'm 32 and I know who Nelson Mandela is. So can you tell our audience a little bit more about that?
Well, first, let me tell you what, we were out filming it in a rural area. We were in a school. We were filming school for the day. And we walked into the classroom and the teacher said, "Oh, so pleased to meet you. Right, we've got everything ready for you. Right, I'm going to ask the children a question." We said, "Fine, go for it." And she said, "Who is the most famous man in South Africa?" There was a long, silent pause. And then one little kid put his hand up and says, "My daddy." And she said, No, that's not what I'm looking for. Somebody that a lot of people know." And the next answer was the headmaster. That wasn't right either. Then they went for the tribal chief. That wasn't right. She was about to tear her hair out. I felt so sorry for this teacher. I've been talking to them all week about Nelson Mandela, and they obviously hasn't gone in the right way. No, Durban at the time, I did a lot of work for Durban Corporation. They had a full-scale video unit, which was brilliant. We made films for international conferences. We made films for the different municipal things like roads, water, sewage, police, fire, you name it, we made it, covered the whole gamut. And Durban was host of the Non-Aligned Movement International Business Conference. So all the head of all the non-aligned movement countries in the world attended this in this brand new conference center, and Nelson Mandela was there to open it. And of course, we got an interview with him, which was possibly my 15 minutes of fame there and gone, because there was Reuters outside, BBC, CNN, ABC, CBC, all of them desperate to have a word with him. But he had one rule: you never use flash photography. He'd had eye surgery. And they had not, it was quite dark in one of the, not dark, but darkish, in one of the areas in the International Convention Centre, and they had been using flash, so he was in a filthy mood, and he was not going to give an interview to anybody except for Durban Corporation, because they were hosting it, etc. So it was my team of 2 others, plus him, plus 3 security guards in one room. And he gave us an interview.
Wow, that's
that was a nice moment.
I'm like speechless just thinking about someone meeting him.
He actually scared me a lot, Faye. He really did, because he wasn't in a good mood. It wasn't going to be broadcast with him and me, like him and the Spice Girls standing down in Cape Town or anything like that. And he was very abrupt, and he had bright blue eyes, and he was over 6 foot, and very, there's really powerful people that you meet that sort of exude power, and you feel about, oh,
yes,
high at that. I felt the same when I chatted to Prince Charles. I thought he was a bit of a wet, because everybody laughed and said he talked to plants, and he did this, that, and the other. But in fact, when I did actually meet him, he was, I thought, very confident, very, very personable, very controlled, very calm. But then if you have that kind of power and that money, I think it just happens.
Yeah.
It just there's an aura about you that's different. But Nelson Mandela certainly, has won the from the rest of the world. He's won a lot of accolades, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And like you were saying, meeting someone, especially of that stature, is like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Like, you almost have a panic attack. I would never have been able to do that.
Oh, you would. It's really, I fell over Graca Michel. Now, Graca Michel was his second wife. In fact, his third wife, I think, yes, because his first wife stayed in the village and his second wife was Winnie Mandela. And she hissed at me. She came out with a load of expletives, and I thought, I don't think we're going to be best friends ever. I didn't mean to trip over her, but she did have her feet stuck out, and I just happened to be fairly dark in the while the speeches were going on. So, but I did meet quite a few, people who of influence, and chatted to them. And as I say, they were just in the right place at the right time, put it that way.
That's awesome. I love that. I've only ever met 2 actors. Like, that was it. I met Mark Wahlberg and Kiefer Sutherland at random places. So switching gears again, back to your books.
Right.
Memoirs and thrillers. What do you think makes the best of each of those? What makes a great memoir? What makes a great psychological thriller?
I don't know. I think my strength is in the narrative. Not the narrative. What am I talking about? In the, oh goodness, when people talk to each other, dialogue.
Okay.
I think that's probably my strength, simply because of all the years that I wrote scripts. I would have to write the dialogue, but then I would be on the other side of the splits paper, if you like. I'd be writing pan across front of school, or pan down to ground level, or pull focus on such and such. This is where I had this big transition to writing books. Can I write one? So I think dialogue has been my strength, and I've got to be very careful that I don't put too much dialogue in and not enough description of what they are and where they are, you know. So I think, yeah. And as for ideas, I don't know where they come from. I've got no idea. I just sit down and I have an idea of what's going to happen at the end and what's going to happen at the beginning, and I just go for it. In fact, I've just completed a short novella to go in with a compendium with other writers. And just this morning I woke up in bed and thought, hang on a minute, I'm going to add to that. Now it's the second round of editing at the moment, but I'm going to send him an email tonight to say, look, I've just thought of this new ending to tack on the end. Do you think it will work? Because just ideas just come to you, usually in the shower when you can't write them down.
Yeah, or driving. I've noticed that too.
Yes.
So I noticed a couple of your books. I'm not sure if they're all published under. I'm probably going to butcher this. Umhalga Press.
Umschlange.
Okay, I think there was a typo.
No, it's Umschlange Press. No, I'm being a bit naughty here. I'm just calling myself that from the point of view of publishing, right?
Oh, I love it.
It's the name actually means place of the reeds. And when we lived in South Africa, we lived in an area, suburb called Umhlanga Rocks. So I did Google to make sure there wasn't an Umhlanga Press anywhere. So if you look closely and you Google it, you won't find that they've got a registered office or anything like that. And Umhlanga is part of the reed dance that they have in Swaziland every year, where the king chooses a new wife every year. And the bare-breasted maidens dance past him waving reeds. So it was just a throwback to the African thing, really.
Oh, wow. I love that. I tried to pronounce it beforehand. I'm like, nope, I got to ask for clarification on that.
In fact, I tell you what, Christa Berg, when he first came, we knew his manager quite well. The first night that we went to his concert, because we just got tickets for every night, we went every night, and I said to him after the first night, actually, it's not Umhlanga, it's Umhlanga. So he put it right for the rest of the tour, which was quite a good thing.
That's awesome. So I did see in your bio that you are currently in Spain. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
I got to know where in Spain, because I did visit Spain, Rota specifically, on one of my very bouncy trips to Europe. So where in Spain are you, if you don't mind?
No, I'll be a little bit vague because I've been warned that it's wise to. We're about halfway down on the right-hand side. We're equidistant, more or less, from Valencia and Alicante. So we can look down over the Mediterranean. It's about 5 kilometers.
Oh, beautiful.
And I can see it in what I call our little rabbit hutch. It's not big, but it suits us. And we're here for the duration now.
That's great. I love Spain. That's one of the best things. But I will say the rain in Spain goes everywhere. It does not stay on the plane.
It doesn't. It doesn't. We had quite a heavy downpour about 2 nights ago, and we were actually looking at all the bits of rubble in the road, yesterday as we went along the road.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest impressions when I was there was the rain, because the entire road just turned into a river, and I'm like, I'm not crossing that. I'm going back to my room. Bye.
Yes, they have what they call a gota fria, and it comes down like stair rods. It just absolutely pours down and pours down. Because we don't have it all the time, the drainage systems here are pretty wanting one way or another, and it just the streets fill up very quickly. But it's amazing. Within a couple of hours, once it stops raining, it's all gone.
Yeah, that is impressive how quickly it dries up. It's almost like it never rained.
Yes. I didn't realize Spain would be quite so cold. What happened was that we realized that time in Africa was probably not for us anymore. All our children had left and gone, to Europe, and now some of them are in Australia. And I was getting sidelined towards the end, which is very sad because my clients wanted me to make programs, but government restrictions, and even though I split my company and went in with people of different nationalities, if you like, it still wasn't a black empowerment. I went the full route and re-registered and everything. It still wasn't enough to get me the work, and things were getting a little bit uncomfortable there. So I woke my husband up in the middle of the night and said, do you realise that because we've got a British passport, we can live anywhere we like in the EU? Because I knew that UK was going to be too cold, too many clouds, too wet, too windy. That would just kill me. So then we sort of started looking around as to where we could settle, and Spain was our choice.
That's awesome. I love that. That's one of the things I do miss is traveling.
Well, we're hoping to travel a bit more, but if the COVID doesn't go away with the next few years, we'll be doing it in our wheelchairs and our walkers and stuff. I don't know. And nobody will hire us a car. But yes, Russia's next on our list.
Oh, wow.
We came back from India in March, which all sounds very, very exotic, but just 8 hours before complete lockdown in Spain. And Russia's next on the list, but it won't be this year, and it probably won't be next year either.
Yeah, we'll see how all that goes. Hopefully, fingers crossed, things get better. I know I've got a trip planned for Tennessee next year, so I'm definitely, come on, let's clear it all up. Let's go.
I'd love to do a road trip around America. I really would. That's on my bucket list. With one of these big camper vans or something, and park in Walmart car parks and stuff. Oh,
yes. If you ever come to New England, I highly suggest July through about mid-September. After that, it's freaking cold.
Yes. I do the hot bits, yes.
So you've had numerous awards.
Yes.
In independent publishing, were there some, because the list is about as long as my arm, were some in for the production company, for screenwriting, all mixed together, or are they strictly just writing awards?
The ones I sent you, I think, are all strictly writing. I did have them when we had this enormous mansion place in Shanghai Rocks. We're now in this little rabbit hutch in Spain. I did have them all framed and up on the wall. 21 of them, I think, and now they're in a box under the bed, never to see the light of day. Sure, when I want somebody will just tear them all up. Yes, I did get a lot for the script writing and for directing and for overall concepts and stuff on various programs that we made. I was very lucky.
That's amazing. That's one of the things I never know if I could actually win an award for my writing, or even like put in for an award on it. I think I'm still too early in my career for that.
When you think about it, I mean, I was 60 by the time I self-published my first book. I did have two published by the Big Five way back in 1990, but they were commissioned. And when I think about it now, they asked me to write a whole series. They were educational books. They asked me to write a whole series, Macmillan did, and I turned them down because I couldn't afford to. I had this Walter Mitty husband. I couldn't rely to bring the money home at the end of every month. And so I actually turned down what would have happened if I'd actually been able to accept and then go on to writing novels and stuff if I was still with them that's another story. But at the time I said no thanks, because script writing and producing videos and that are paid in 30 days. And I couldn't wait 6 months for royalties, and I didn't know how much they'd be. And I had 2 children who were so selfish, they insisted on having food and shelter and
How
clothes.
dare they?
Absolutely. Plus a St. Bernard, plus, the domestic help, because without her, I could never have succeeded, because she was just brilliant. She kept the whole house running. Plus the gardener and his huge tribe of people that he was, supporting,
Right.
plus the cats and the furries and all the other bits and pieces that we had. So I had to keep bringing the money in. So, yeah, I turned them down. So those 2, no prizes there, of course. But yes, I did have those published a long time ago. But as I say, I've been slugging away at writing since 1985. So if you like, that's like an apprenticeship, I guess.
That's a long time to write.
It is a long time. I've always wanted to. My grandfather actually ran a newspaper in China, which he inherited from his father and grandfather. And he hated writing. And I said, "Oh, Grandpa, I want to be a writer. You write for Fleet Street, as a correspondent. Just tell them about me, and I can go and work for the Times or the Telegraph or something." He put me right. So I never did get to do it until I fell into it by chance.
So falling into broadcasting, news broadcasting, was that part of the bayonet story?
Yes. What happened was I was teaching at the British Council School there, and a friend of mine came and said, "Hey, they want English announcers on the radio in Benghazi, Libya, and they're paying a fortune." And they were paying a huge amount of money. And she said, "Go along for an interview." And I did, just for a joke, and they accepted me. So I worked there for several years. And on one occasion, it was September the 1st, which is the Libyan Day of Revolution. Somebody had taken a pot shot at Colonel Gaddafi in Benghazi when he was reviewing the Navy, which consisted of one gunboat, which was 16 foot long. And I was met at the gate by these guards with fixed bayonets who escorted me, followed my car in. I parked, I got out, they stuck right next to me. They followed me into the crew room. They watched what I did. The frightening thing about it for me was that I didn't think they could understand any English. So if I'd said on air, "I think Gaddafi is an idiot," or something similar, or "I don't believe in the revolution," or whatever, would they have been any the wiser? Probably not. But they even followed me to the ladies, and that was horrendous. But while I was on air, and I was mainly continuity, so we were playing records, or we were doing recording tapes from the control room at the same time. There was another guy with the controller with, resting a bayonet on his neck as well. And I was dripping sweat. I was terrified. I was shaking like a leaf, but I was on live. So it wasn't just a question of going back and doing it later. And that was a very uncomfortable 3 hours that I was on air.
Yeah, understandable.
Yeah.
Our listeners aren't going to be able to see my face, but my jaw has just been on the floor that entire story. Like, oh my God.
The thing is, a lot of people don't believe me. But I mean, look, you've traveled too. You know that strange things or out of this normality things can happen when you're overseas. And those countries are a law unto themselves. They don't follow the same set of laws that we have on a regular basis.
Yes.
They just don't. But anyway, I did get out of there in one piece. So, and the next time when I went back, they weren't there, so that I had survived, And so did Gaddafi on that occasion too, yeah.
I'm glad you survived. I mean, we wouldn't have these stories if you hadn't. So we are coming up on time. I do have 2 more questions before we jump into our rapid fire.
Okay.
This question has a catch to it because I like to do that. The question, what advice do you have for new writers like myself? The catch is you can't say right. Anything else on the table, but you can't say right.
Oh, that's a nuisance, because that's about what I was going to say. You knew that, didn't you?
Yes.
I can't say right. Well, I could say practice and never give up. And if you are getting a lot of bad feedback, genuinely take advice from people who have been writing, who have been successful. When I was lecturing in script writing, not in writing as such, but in script writing, I'd have about 40 in the lecture theatre. And I could tell you at the end of the first 2 lectures in the series who would succeed and who wouldn't. They had that vision. You've got to have some vision. You've got to be able to imagine that if you're writing about having coffee in a coffee shop, as you're writing, you've got to be in that coffee shop. Well, for me, anyway, you've got to be there. You've got to be able to smell the coffee, taste the croissant, hear the chatter, hear the buzz, notice the dog under the chair or the kid throwing a temper tantrum. And I think if you can place yourself in a situation and feel it while you're writing, that is going to make all the difference.
That is beautiful. I couldn't have found a better way to say it myself. That is beautiful. So my final question is, why do you, Lucinda E. Clark, write?
Well, it's a bit like asking somebody why they take heroin. There's actually lots of difference. It's I get twitchy when I don't write. Not when I'm traveling. I wondered if I'd manage 3 months away, which we did at the beginning of the year, whether I get twitchy. But I was busy and I was traveling and I was seeing new places, so that was fine. But when I'm not traveling, and I wish I could travel more, but we're not going to be doing that much, I get actually quite twitchy if I don't write. It's crazy. It's like, I need a fix. I need a cigarette. I need another shoot up of heroin. I just love doing it. I'm just there, and it's just part of me. I don't know. Blame the genes or the chromosomes or whatever they are.
I agree.
I can't do much else, you see. I'm not that good at cooking, and I used to sew and knit and stuff, but I'm the lousiest housewife in the world, and I'm the hostess with the leastest. So I've got to have just one small bit of, I wouldn't say talent, but something.
I would definitely say talent. I mean, look at what you've done. That's amazing. So we're going to jump into our rapid fire round, which is only 10 questions. Just say whatever answer comes first to top of your head. No real need to think about it too much.
Oh, it's like the ink blot test, is it?
Yep. It's all just for fun. If you don't have an answer, feel free to say pass.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Okay, we'll go for it.
All right. Paella or fish and chips?
Paella, vegetarian.
Desert or mountains?
Desert.
Favorite dog breed?
Small fluffy things. I'm just trying to think of the right kind. Not Pekingese. We had a Yorkie. No, wait a minute. Like a fluffy Yorkie. Small and cuddly and fluffy.
Okay. Night on the town or quiet night at home?
Quiet night at home.
If all your books were destroyed in a fire and you could only save one, which would it be?
Walking over eggshells.
Of all the places you have lived, where would you like to go back and visit?
Miami.
Oh, nice. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Favorite season?
Summer.
What are you currently reading?
A psychological thriller by a lady called Cathy McGowan.
Nice. And is a hot dog a sandwich?
Not in the British sense, no.
That's 10 questions. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your time and knowledge with me. Where can our listeners find out all about you and what you're working on?
Oh, right. Can I just have to check this out because I can never remember it exactly. I'm just trying. I've got a web page, and that's probably the best place to find me. And that is, where are we? Oh goodness, I can't. Oh yes, Lucinda E. Clark, author. That's all one word, and that's Clark with an E. So it's Lucinda E. Clark, author.com. And if you Google that, it should come up with all the various things. I've got a Facebook page for a group page for my readers. I've got a personal page. I've got, but all the information generally is on my webpage.
And I'll be posting that link in the show notes. Thank you once again, Lucinda, for joining us on the Great Writers Share podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. I've really enjoyed our chat, Faye. I really have. And good luck to you and to all the listeners.
Thanks, everyone, for listening, and we will see you next week.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of the Great Writers Share podcast. Next week, Dan will be joined by New York Times best-selling author of Bird Box, Josh Malerman. Don't forget, you can get early access to every episode of the Great Writers Share podcast and the chance to ask any upcoming guests any of your questions by simply becoming a patron of the show. All you need to do is visit www.patreon.com/Great Writers Share and support the show for as little as $1 a month. One more time, that's www.patreon.com/Great Writers Share. Until next time.